everybody. This is Postmortem Nightshade, one half of your wonderful, amazing, ghastly ghost birds. And joining me this evening is.
Salathro, how's it going? Woo!
Woohoo! Whoop, whoop, whoop. Welcome back, everybody, to the channel. We apologize for the missed week. There was a little bit of chaos happening behind the scenes here, but don't worry, we are back and very excited to continue our animated DC movie discussion. And this week, if you don't know, we are on part 4, if you can believe it. So we are in the years 2019, I believe, through about 2020. So only 2 years of movies, but plenty to talk about for a whole episode. So, Slothro, do you want to fill them in on what movies we'll be discussing today?
Yes, so the movies we're going into today will be Reign of Superman from 2019, Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 2019, Batman Hush from 2019, which is an absolute banger. We've got Justice League Dark Apocalypse War from 2020, and lastly, we have Superman Red Sun from 2020.
Perfect. Yeah, so we've got a good bunch of movies to talk about here today. If you aren't familiar with our format, please go check out our previous episodes if you want to hear us talk more about other movies, DC animated films that have come out before this. But we always give a spoiler warning, beep boop beep boop, right up front. We will be discussing spoiler heavy topics about all of these films. So if any of them pique your interest, please go check them out. However, if you also want to listen to what we say and then go watch them because we piqued your interest, that's great too. Definitely come back. Let us know in the comments your thoughts. And as always, we appreciate all of the likes, the subscribes. It is so great to be back here again with you this week. And starting first up here, Slothro, let's hear your thoughts for Reign of the Supermen.
Yes, so this movie, kind of coming off a lot of Batman movies leading up to this point, these 2 years kind of have a lot more of Superman in them. So you get a lot more of that kind of part of the DC universe if that's something that you really enjoy. So Reign of the Superman is honestly a very interesting movie because it's not just about Superman. As the title implies, it's supermen and women as well. So there is essentially what happens is Superman dies after fighting, spoiler alert, Doomsday. Kind of like in the live action movies. And so essentially what happens is there's a power vacuum that Superman left to be able to protect people. And so what this movie is about essentially is having four supermen and superwomen come together to kind of embody what Superman's, like the idea of what Superman is. So you get Superboy, you get Steel, you get Cyborg Superman, and you get the Eradicator all working together. And what's really unique is you get a lot more of kind of Lex Luthor kind of playing a mentor figure, especially for Superboy, or Connor Kent or Connell. So it's very interesting to kind of see all of the unique dynamics leading up to what happens into the final battle. And so I think overall, the overall story is very unique, especially when it comes to the premise and getting to see all of these characters work together. Because some of these characters, you hardly see. I think this is probably one of the only times you see some of these characters in like any of like the animated universe or live action. So it's really a unique, fun experience. And I think overall, leading into this year for 2019, I think they did a really good job with making a very unique movie.
Yeah, I agree 1000% with Slothro. It is really great to see in this movie characters that we don't always get to see put to screen. And I know that they have tried to bring more characters into the live action DC universe, especially with James Gunn heading that department now. So hopefully we'll get to see more unique characters moving forward. But like Slothro said, we get a Lex Luthor mentorship of Superboy in this movie. A spoiler, he sucks butt cheeks at being a mentor. But that's not a shocker. He is Lex Luthor. The premise, or I guess origin story of Superboy is very similar to Young Justice. However, this version of Superboy, I would compare much more to Wally West and Kid Flash, personality-wise, rather than the traditional Superboy that we did see in Young Justice. So there's definitely a distinction there between the two representations of the characters. I honestly think Lex Luthor is also quite funny in this movie. He's got some quippy lines. He clearly is not interested in being a good mentor or father figure to this Superman clone he's created. And honestly, for me, this is probably my favorite Superman film to date, just because it gives us so much more depth and access to the world of Superman through the introduction of all the other Superman characters, and Lois gets to be a bigger part of the story, and we get to see the Fortress of Solitude, and we get to see more of Metropolis and the politics of everything that's happening there. So I just think this story, this particular movie just adds a lot of depth. And then of course we get Superman back at the end, and that's just the, icing on top of the cake of a movie I enjoy quite a lot. The animation is still following this era of the DC animated film, so it's a good animation style. And honestly, I do appreciate that we get more Lois buildup because they're setting up for her to be an even bigger character in a later film we'll talk about in this video. But it really is a great Superman movie. Honestly, my favorite one. I actually saw this movie before I saw Death of Superman. So you can watch it without that. I mean, you will have the ending spoiled for you of Death of Superman, but I think the title spoils it. So, if you're just wanting a good Superman animated film, definitely check this out. I think it stands really well on its own.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed my time with this movie. And what's even more interesting is that this year of movies in 2019, I feel like have some absolute bangers. I don't know what they were doing when they were writing in this year, but the next movie we're going into is Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is two completely different universes that you never would think would tie in at all. And somehow they made it to where it's like another absolutely peak cinema movie. So in this one, you of course, got your Batman, Robin, Batgirl, Alfred, but then you've also got on the other side, you got Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and Michelangelo as well. And so you kind of get to see them kind of almost verse each other for a little bit, trying to figure out like what's going on. But then as more time goes on, that's when they actually find the real villains, which is both of them. It would be like Shredder and Ra's al Ghul, as well as the Joker, Harley Quinn, and Bane, and all of the traditional Batman characters villain-wise that you know. And so it's really fun getting to see them by the end kind of team up to try to deal with this kind of like joint threat. And so I think they did a really good job of kind of bringing the vibe of Gotham City mixed with what you see in like the animated stuff for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so I think they did an absolutely amazing job with this. And it's just a really, really fun movie that kind of like hearing it initially, you're kind of like, well, those are two things I don't think would go well. I think in this package, the way it's animated, the way it's written, I think it's very, very interesting.
Agreed for sure. I think that the Ninja Turtles are, I mean, honestly, Batman has been pitched as family friendly. He has had his run of cartoons on, the friendly, kid friendly Cartoon Network type stuff. But so have the Ninja Turtles. They're also very family friendly. A spoiler warning or a big flashing sign: this is not a family friendly movie. It definitely sticks with the blood, gore, violence that we are used to seeing from this run of the DC animated films. We've mentioned that in previous videos. They definitely don't stray away from that here. And I stand on business.
It's not clocking to you that I'm standing on business, is it?
It's about what I said before. Batman definitely has the best alternate timeline story stuff for sure, and this movie is no exception. It is very fun, and I will say there is a beheading. So if you were, wondering, well, maybe it could be, no, it's definitely not family friendly. And I just love the marriage of the two worlds of the villains, because honestly, what a great package of Ra's al Ghul and Shredder working together. It's great. They are both leaders of these big group of ninjas who are out to, destroy the world because they're villains. So that is super fun to see them kind of work together. As you know, villains don't work together very well, and that's true in this movie. The turtles are amazing. I love the turtles. The animation style is different in this film, but it's so cool. It's little different from what we had been seeing, so it distinguishes itself, which is nice. And the turtles finding the Batcave is a super great part, and Robin and Batgirl being included is also super fun, because they're Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then meeting the teenage sidekicks of Batman. There's some great dynamics there. And honestly, I would have loved a sequel to this movie. As far as I'm aware of, I have not seen one come out. Fact check us in the comments, but I have been waiting and waiting, and I would love to get a sequel to this film. I thought it was super good. And we do love to mention funny memes that come with these movies. There is I will insert it now, the Cowabummer meme. So,
this is where I watched my parents die, Raphael.
Cowabummer, dude.
Again, peak cinema, really enjoy this Ninja Turtle Batman movie.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I don't know what they do with like why Batman in particular is like where all the really great adaptations go, but hey, I love to see it. it kind of goes from those two movies. So we have a Superman and then a Batman movie, almost right into another really interesting Batman movie. And this one, like the prior movies, like Postmortem Nightshade said, they're not family friendly, especially this one. This is Batman Hush from 2019. This premise, story wise, is very. It's not on the lighthearted side. It's very much a darker story, especially when it comes to Hush, which is revealed in the movie spoilers as the Riddler. So it's very interesting getting to see such a, I guess, backseat character actually play a way deeper role in a Batman movie than you normally see. Like even in like shows like Young Justice, the Riddler is kind of just like a an off joke. He's usually always the butt of the joke. But in this movie, they completely flip that on its head and almost kind of give it like a Arkham Knight kind of vibe with the Riddler. And so you get to see Batman and Catwoman, Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, Superman. You also get the Joker and Poison Ivy in this movie as well. And what's really cool is this movie had a lot of, I guess if you guys are in know of like ships and stuff, I feel like a lot of the main like visual ships of Batman and Catwoman, I feel like at least when I was watching, started with this movie. Because in this movie, they really kind of go into Batman falling in love with Catwoman, or kind of having that love kind of dynamic. And so I think overall this movie does a really good job. It's got a really fun story. It's definitely got kind of like that Sherlock Holmes energy into it. And so if you really like a moody kind of movie, but like with that Batman kind of sprinkled on top, then you'll definitely enjoy this movie for sure.
That's such a great way to put it, Slothro. This leans heavily into the detective side of Batman comics, which sometimes is explored, sometimes not, but very moody with a sprinkle of Batman's great way to put it. And I love that they bring a B tier villain, if we're being generous. The Riddler is definitely a B tier villain. He gets the spotlight here. And I think that's a pretty good twist. And I know the comic book was pretty well received when it came out. The animation, we've moved on from the branch out they did with the Ninja Turtles. So this is back in that animation style of that 2010s era here. And we get to see, like Slothro said, a wide catalog of we get to see the full catalog basically of the Batman villains, which is great. And the introduction of Batman and Catwoman's relationship honestly isn't explored too much more after this film, actually. I think they basically just kind of wanted to get it out in this run of the timeline. Spoiler alert for Apocalypse War, we reset the timeline again. But I think they wanted to explore the Batman-Catwoman relationship, so we do get that here. Obviously, it never lasts. The ending, of course, torpedoes their relationship, which is a bummer because I think Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle have a great relationship. But honestly, some of the appeal of their relationship is that they are, dancing around each other. They're not committed. They're not, they're not very vulnerable and open with each other. They're as vulnerable and open as their characters can be, but don't expect any white picket fence happily ever after type of stuff with these two characters. But they do give great depth there, and I think that it adds a lot to Bruce Wayne's character, having him trust Selina Kyle, reveal his identity to her. Yeah, it's adding some nice depth, trying to flesh out a little bit more of just than the Batman persona, which I always appreciate. Seeing more of the Bruce Wayne side is always nice, especially since we have so much focus on Batman already. And I like the Lazarus Pit is really utilized in this run of the timeline, which I really appreciate because I think it's a really cool, interesting, almost, it brings eternal life essentially. So I love that they try to use that more and more in the comics. And to be completely honest, let's just get this out of the way. The Batman moral code is literally one of the stupidest things at this point. I do not understand it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's kind of like, oh my gosh. I think if anyone plays games, if you guys have ever seen like the Injustice branch off of this, it goes a lot into kind of like some of the morals of Batman versus Superman, for example. And so, yeah, there's definitely some times where you watch Batman and he almost plays judge, jury, and executioner in some ways. And that's kind of explored in prior movies like the Red Hood movie, but it's not usually touched on that much. And so it can be very much like each movie kind of gives you like a different perspective of Batman. Batman almost kind of like does like a pick and choose kind of thing, depending on the situation. He's very much about fly by the seat of his pants kind of guy.
For sure. And his judge, jury, executioner does not always make sense in like if there was people like, the Joker who were committing these mass crimes, there are parts of the world where they would be executed for their crimes. And at some point, it is very frustrating to watch Batman's very intense hypocrisy about various villains and his approach to them and what he thinks is going to put them on the straight and narrow. And yet he continues to allow such violent and sadistic villains like the Joker keep going. For example, in Batman Hush, then he is like at the risk of his own life trying to save the Riddler, who's been trying to kill him this entire movie. And, Selena Kyle allows the Riddler to fall to his death, and that's a big division between the two of them with their relationship. And I don't, his moral code, allows for the universe and the world to continue. So I get the idea. I get him being a very stubborn, staunch character. It's all in line, but man, there are times where I'm like, dude, this moral code does not make any sense for Batman with all of these terrible villains.
Yeah, especially with, like, you would think that, like, with them continuing to rack up doing bad and bad and bad, you'd be like, bro, all they're doing is making it, the things they've done, way worse because they're continuing to do it. So, I don't know. But that's like a whole other thing when it comes to Batman, which kind of leads into, like what you said, the universal reset in Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. So, yeah, postmortem Nightshade. What do you think of, like, this movie in general?
Yeah, it was good. I again, I don't know why we're calling these Justice League movies, but we talked about that before. Justice League Dark. This one does, I will say, have a lot more Justice League than Justice League Dark did. Apocalypse War is good. I didn't like it as much as Dark. I kind of liked the themes and the exploration of the magic world a little better in that. But this is really your culmination of everything that we've been building up to at this point with the start of the 2010s runs. And so we have the Justice League finally wanting to take down Darkseid once and for all. This movie is rated R. I don't really know particularly what distinguished this movie from some of the others, specifically like the Batman movies. I'm really not sure what distinguished this and got that rated R rating, to be honest. So this is no more brutal or bloody, I would say, than any of the other previous DC animated stuff. So, you can be aware that it's rated R, but I don't think there's anything more or less than the previous DC films. The twist at the end of this movie is great. We find out that Batman has a contingency plan. Obviously, he's not really sure if they're going to succeed in taking down Darkseid, and so he has Zatanna built in a failsafe, essentially through Constantine. She places a spell on him, and he is a coward, basically. It forces him to be a coward and run away, and we get to see his struggle with that. And we as the audience aren't let in on that, obviously, till the end. And so, we get to see and go through Constantine's growth with him as he's trying to come to terms with who he is as a person. Obviously, we get some more introduction tie-in with Trigon and Raven, which is really great. And the fight between Darkseid and Trigon is super fun to see. That is not something that I would have ever thought to write into a DC story, but I love it. The writers at DC, very creative. They like to explore a lot of different paths, and so it's really fun to see the two of them have it out. Honestly, I just wish that Batman's plan maybe had been a little more fleshed out, because he doesn't let, that's Batman. He doesn't let anybody in, but I feel like he could have let a couple more people in on the plan just to help Constantine, save the Earth a little faster, prevent more people from dying. But, that's, tomato, tomato. I do like the writing on Superman is pretty strong in these run of the 2010 comics. And that is, that is brought to a head here in this film because Superman is actually depowered through kryptonite in his veins. And they really allow his character, like his what he's made of, honestly, to shine more rather than just, when he's Superman and he does the right thing, it seems like that would be easy because he's so super powered. But it's really great to see that even without powers, he's willing to fight for Earth. Lex's involvement, in this movie is unsurprising. They do a complexity thing where they try to, mislead you thinking that he is, working for Darkseid willingly, but he's the spy. That's not shocking. So the writing on that part was a little weak for me. I do think, honestly, Thanos is still my favorite purple villain guy because Thanos doesn't need a Batman to be super smart. He has got all the brains there for himself. He does have a couple henchmen that help him out, but it is kind of annoying that or not Thanos, that Darkseid relies so much on Batman in this movie. But I get it. Batman's got a great brain, so might as well use it. And what happens to the Teen Titans is absolutely brutal. And we really try to explore the, I guess, limits that the Lazarus Pit has. Obviously, Dick Grayson is slain in the fight, and Damian tries to bring him back. Does not go very well. I found that very interesting that they did give the Lazarus Pit limitations, so I appreciated that element, that writing. And honestly, the best part of this movie for me was the writing and the wrap-up of Raven and Damian's relationship. We have seen that develop through several movies at this point, so that was really great. And to be completely honest, the world as it stands by the end of this movie, I could have maybe actually done with one or two more films before the Flash resets everything. I think, they do want the happily ever after in these movies, to be honest. And so I could have honestly gone for one or two more just to have them explore this universe a little bit more, because it was so interesting to watch what was happening. But of course, the Flash does reset everything. And so, that's how they chose to end this. Definitely not my favorite. Not a terrible DC movie, but definitely not my favorite. Some of the writing could have been a little better. But overall, good animation, good fights. Yeah, pretty decent.
I honestly don't think I could have said it any better myself. So yeah, this kind of leads into the last movie, which kind of for a little bit of intrigue into this. So this is Superman Red Sun, which came out in 2020. Now, to preface this, my brain, when I went to research this movie, accidentally watched a visual comic or visual movie of the comic strips and not this movie itself. So when I talk about this, I'm talking more about from like the actual comics perspective of what this movie and story is about. And it's kind of intriguing. It very much kind of goes for, Marvel's What If, which, is a lot of these branch off universes. But I feel like this one is definitely kind of got that what if juice running through its veins. Because this one is basically what if Superman didn't land in, like, let's say America. He lands in another country altogether, another continent. And so it kind of goes into what he would be like. And a lot of it is similar to what he would be like in other places. But what really differentiates like this timeline is the fact that not only is Lois Lane married to Lex Luthor, which is absolutely weird, but you also get Brainiac. Like Brainiac is a decent sized part in this movie as well. And Batman is not, I guess, quote unquote, the hero in this one, or not viewed as such. Like Superman in this one has got like this weird complex going on, like mentally, like he's almost like he's trying to play like the overseer of everything. And so this movie kind of plays out. You kind of get to see this back and forth, and then eventually it all kind of just ends almost similarly how it began, which is very interesting. So it's almost like a loop in and of itself. But I think overall it's a very interesting story. It definitely leaves a lot of like intrigue of like, okay, like what if this happened, like kind of seeing what plays out. But yeah, I think overall it was definitely interesting. It's definitely not my favorite timeline or thing to watch, but for my time watching it, I was like, okay, this is interesting. So that's kind of my thoughts overall on it.
Yeah, Slothro and I ended up watching the same thing. So for context, when you Google this film, then Google tells you that this movie is available free with ads on YouTube. And so I clicked on it and saw it was an hour long, and, it had the same title and the right cover art I was looking for. So I got through a lot of this movie, and then a friend of mine informed me that this, like Slothro said, was not the actual Red Sun movie. This was like he said, the animated comics with narration. So I'm not entirely sure why Google and YouTube is telling everyone that this is Superman Red Sun, because it's not. But regardless, it's just the narrated playthrough of the comic series. There's not a lot of embellishment there except a little bit of movement and stuff, but it's pretty bare bones. It's just like reading the comic yourself. But besides, accidentally watching the wrong movie. well, Yeah, I mean, what would you say, Slots? We're watching the wrong movie, or because we got the story, then we still watched the movie?
Well, I mean, hey, this was the source material of the movie. So if it branched off and did its own thing, a lot of it comes from this original comic strip. So if anything, we went right to the source and we figured out what was going on here with this story. And I think overall, is all right.
Yeah, we got it straight from the horse's mouth, you could say. But the story was interesting and compelling. I'm sure I would have enjoyed it maybe a little bit more if it was not a moving comic. But the story was good. I can see why they made this into an animated film. The twist at the end about Superman, like Saltro said, this is kind of like a loop movie. Basically, we find out that Earth has evolved so much that Earth actually is Krypton in this version of events, and that Superman being sent back, he was actually just, it's a very weird, trippy, time loopy kind of movie, but Superman is just a child of Luthor bloodline from the future, and they send him back, and yes, anyway, it's very time loopy and everything, but it was cool to realize, oh, that Earth's actually so evolved that it's like Krypton, and Lex Luthor is a much more, I don't know if benevolent is the right word. He's a little less evil. Little less. Yeah, clarification there. But he does try to, you know, have the good of the people. This is a very America-centric concept where Superman obviously was, introduced as a truth, justice, and the American way. This would be the idea if Superman was raised in the Soviet Union. So obviously he was raised with Soviet ideals. What would that look like? And then Lex Luthor obviously is a through and through American capitalist, and his competition was Superman. So we get very interesting themes of power, government, global relations, the global stage, how do countries interact, that sort of thing. What do you think about the themes in this movie, Slothro? Were they interesting? Did they bore you? Would you have liked more expansion? What were your thoughts there?
If I'm being honest, I kind of thought a lot of them were pretty bland. If I'm being honest, because I wasn't really coming to this movie thinking it would have a lot of I don't know, deep thought ideas, which is kind of what this whole comic strip is trying to push for, but in a more visual aspect. I feel like watching other shows to kind of get those interesting thought, those concepts kind of across. I feel like I get that better in other mediums than this kind of one in particular. Especially when it feels like you're watching a PowerPoint presentation for an hour and a half. It's very much kind of but yeah, no, I thought they were all right. They're nothing crazy, at least for me when I've watched others, other movies and TV shows. I feel like I've seen it better in other places, but I definitely think for what you're getting, I think it's an interesting watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think that nothing that they explore here really hasn't been explored before. I think the most interesting part is giving Superman Soviet ideals from Cold War era. So that's probably the most interesting part, but I agree. Slothro is right. You can probably see, for example, even in shows like Invincible or The Boys, you definitely get a better, deeper exploration of some of those themes for sure. But, honestly, I do have a desire now to find and watch the actual animated version of this film. And who knows, maybe we would enjoy it more, but we really did get to the source material watching, this film, this animated PowerPoint, as Lothra put it, which is a very apt description. But yeah, so that is pretty much all the movies that we're going to cover for this episode. What are your final thoughts on these set of films, Slothro?
So for me, I think overall it had some absolute bangers. I would feel like it had a really strong beginning, a pretty strong middle, and then kind of like a wet fart end to these 2 years. Because you kind of start out with an absolutely banger Superman movie, which for me, kind of like what you're saying postmortem, is probably one of my more favorite Superman properties to watch, along with a super interesting concept with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles involved, and then of course the interesting movie that is Batman Hush. All of those playing out, and then you kind of just get into kind of the wet fart. And so I think overall, I think some of these are definitely, I would recommend watching these for sure. Especially if you're totally fine with a lot of these movies and their ratings. Definitely, I feel like the first 3 would be my top recommendations. The 2 Batman movies and the Superman movie. Just because they're very fun, they're very enjoyable, they're pretty to watch. and they're very interesting in the messages that they share. And so I would definitely say overall, if you're looking at these movies to see them, definitely I'd recommend the first three.
Yeah, I think for me, I agree. The first three, and my favorite out of this group is easily Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was a really surprise hit. I have enjoyed that movie for many years. I've rewatched it several times. So, yeah, definitely my favorite. What's your favorite of this group if you had to pick just one?
Ooh, for me, it's either between the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Batman Hush. Just because Batman Hush, I feel like was such a balanced package. But I think honestly, for just kind of giving me Teen Titans Go energy, like to the movies, I'll probably say the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, just because I feel like for what they did, they did such a good job. But like honestly, with the way they did that movie, they could probably try to throw like the Scooby Gang in there, and it'd probably be just as good.
Right?
So
That's a great idea. DC, please collab with Scooby Doo. Also, if you love collabs, there's also the Supernatural Scooby Doo episode. That's also really great, also animated. So check that out if you're interested. But yeah, that wraps us up for this week. As always, we are so grateful that you guys tuned in, listened to the whole episode. Thank you so much. We are so excited to continue next week. We've got part 5, some more great DC animated films for you coming at you next week. As always, I love to plug my wonderful, amazing co-host Slothro. He, of course, is still doing that great video game content, so please check that out. We got another Slime Rancher 2 episode, which is always my favorite, and still doing those wonderful, amazing demo videos. Also, he does do shorts content, so if you are interested, he has long form and short form, so whichever you prefer, he's got both options there for you, so please go check out his channel, give him support, give him love, subscribes, likes, we really appreciate it.
thank you so much, and definitely also to my other co-host, Postmortem Nightshade. Definitely go check her out, her channel. She does very interesting movie reviews, and she also does long and short form content. Her long form content videos are absolutely amazing, and I always love to see all of her interesting insights, especially with how quick they come out in the short form content, to getting to kind of know each movie that comes out. And so definitely, if you want to see one of the more newer movies, definitely check out Postmortem's Mario movie review, because I definitely think that was a very fun review to watch. So yeah, definitely go check out Postmortem Nightshade.
Thank you so much, Slothro. And from the wonderful, amazing Ghastly Ghost Birds, we want to give another big thank you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you all next week. Bye!
Bye.